Welcome to the Jobs Report podcast by Swob, the job search platform that lets you swipe to success. Each episode, hosts Stephanie and Alexander Florio bring you expert insights on career trends, job hunting, and forging your path in the modern world of work. Your career success starts here, so let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Jobs Report podcast brought to you by Swob. Today we're going to talk about all things interview tips. Things that we've learned, we've gone through, employer feedback from interview tips that interviews that they've been on, and just things to help you look for a job and actually get that job. So before we get into some tips, I want to ask you, Alex, one of the most ridiculous questions, and this is a common question actually, that I've had during an interview was, what ice cream flavor would you be? And I'll never forget, my response was vanilla. Vanilla is a classic. And I remember the lady who was asking me that question was like, meh, too boring of a response.
No, I disagree. I love vanilla.
Right?
I think people who are trying to be too creative and outside the box when they say a flavor like Rocky Mountain Traps, it's like, what does that even mean? I've never heard of that. What is that? Like
Is it
vanilla?
Rocky
I
Road?
don't know. Whatever. But vanilla it's consistent. It works well with others. It's versatile. It tastes
does.
bomb. Like vanilla with chocolate, caramel, peanut butter, whatever.
Got
Like
sprinkles.
it works well with others.
Vanilla with apple pie.
I like vanilla. I don't see anything wrong with vanilla.
I thought that was a great answer, and I like your explanation. So how about you? Have you had any crazy interview questions before that you can remember?
Honestly, the only one that I can think of was I remember I was in an interview and I was with the owner of the company and he just blurted out, "What's 9 times 9?" And thank God, listen, I'm not the best at math, but thank goodness I knew it. And off the top of my head, I just blurted out 81. And when I said that, the whole time I was just thinking, thank God he didn't ask me something like, "What's 9 times 16?" Because no shot I would have been able to answer that. I would have had to take out my phone. But I remember I just blurted out 81. And then he asked, "Do you know why I asked you that question?" And I responded with, "I'm assuming you want to see how I react under pressure." And he was like, "Yep, pretty much." And I was like, "Okay, great." But the whole time I just remember thinking, wow, like I got lucky.
Yeah.
Thank God he asked what's 9 times 9 and not anything else because, it would not have been a good look for me. That's for sure.
Well, that's good that question was for you because my math sucks. That I would have probably been that person to take out my calculator during the interview. So, yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to speak on some of the tips that I've heard employers talking about interviews that they've conducted, things that they would like to see change, and even from some of our experience as well, even just being in interviews, doing interviews. These are some tips that we hope, obviously, you find helpful to help you really land that job. So some of the things that I hear, and this is maybe the top one, that you think it's kind of a known or a given, but a lot of the times it's not. And it's unfortunate because this question could make or break your interview. So something that we hear employers tell us is, one of the most basic and common interview questions would probably be like, tell me about the company. What do you know about the company?
Pretty standard.
Yeah, you think it's pretty standard. So something that I would, and especially if you're applying to the job and applying to that company, like you should definitely know or have information on the company. So something I would definitely recommend is when you have an interview, make sure you are doing research on the company
100%.
and the place that you're having the interview. That is probably a question that will come up. So just knowing more information about the company, knowing about the company, some of the company culture, maybe some of the projects the company's worked on. So you can even use this to ask the employer who's giving you the interview questions too. So I would definitely say, remember to always, always, always research the company before you go into an interview.
Oh, it's one of those things. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Nice.
So if you're not doing your basic homework, like, yeah, you're right. It's that employer, whoever's doing that interview is going to know right away. Even just from your body language, they'll be able to tell that, you clearly have no idea about the company, its history, what they do. Maybe you have a very basic understanding, but I mean, if you can only speak to a basic level and it's obvious you have no idea what that company does, it's gonna you're gonna stand out like a sore thumb. They're gonna see it right away, right away.
Yeah, and even so, another tip I want to bring up is a lot of the times, especially for a lot of the roles that you even see on Swob, a lot of the more part-time, kind of even full-time, entry-level type roles, what am I supposed to wear to an interview? If I'm having an interview at a retail store, at a grocery store, for example, what do I wear? And I always
That's a
say,
fair question.
yeah, it's always probably best practice to even, I would say, overdress a little bit more to show that you are a professional individual as opposed to underdressing.
100%.
I would even say, like, if it's looking at the company, of course, there goes more research, but checking out the company's Instagram page. What are some employees wearing? Especially if you need some inspiration. Even online, like using tools like TikTok, Pinterest to put an outfit together to really help you if you really are struggling and not knowing what to do. Even if you go to a retail store, I'm sure a sales associate can help you as well if you don't know what to put together or you're not, the most fashionable and you need some help.
Yep.
So I would always say rule of thumb is maybe dress a little bit more professional than you would on a regular basis, and just stay casual, but in a cool, I guess, appropriate professional way.
100%. And that's the first impression that you're going to give off. And if the employer is seeing you for the first time in person and you're dressed like a slob,
Yeah.
and it's funny, the same. So just a quick little story, but the same guy who asked me the 9x9 question, I remember. So I did it. I did get that job, and I remember I showed up to that interview wearing a suit. And I already knew going into the interview that it was a pretty casual workplace.
You were overdressed.
The people there, you could get away with wearing a nice button-down shirt and jeans. So it was a pretty casual culture, but I still showed up to that interview in a suit. And that was actually one thing he had mentioned was, he had appreciated the fact that I had put on a suit because it showed that I was professional and I went above and beyond with how I dressed. So that was something that he definitely picked up on. So I think you're right. It's better to overdress than underdress. It doesn't matter what job you're going for, whether it is your full-time career role, you're well established in your career, or a part-time job at a grocery store.
Exactly.
Put yourself out there in a professional manner. It's the best way you want to be seen, because there's going to be other candidates that aren't going to be doing those things, and this will help you stand out for all the good reasons, for all the right reasons.
Exactly. And even for like a part-time job, you don't necessarily have to show up in a suit, but even like dress pants and a dress shirt, even a blouse, dress pants, or even I would say too, if you want to wear a pair of jeans, make sure the pair of jeans are a darker color, like a dark blue or even a black that I think would look nice and professional and just sharp. And even something else I'd say too is remember to put a brush through your hair, because if you show up and your hair looks like a mess, it just shows the employer like you do not give a shit, and they're going to see that right away, because the first impression you're giving off is how you look.
100%. So there's so many things that you could do. There's so many small things. Like these little things help out so much more. And speaking while on that topic of things that will help you when going for an interview, one thing that you should also be doing is practicing interview questions.
Yeah.
Prepare a list of questions, prepare a list of common questions, because you're more than likely going to get asked at the end of an interview, assuming all went well, do you have any questions for me? And you don't necessarily have to have 5 questions that you want to ask that employer, but it's always good and handy to have at least 1 or 2 questions in your back pocket that you can reference and ask the employer, because as much as they're interviewing you, in a way you're also interviewing them.
Yeah.
It's something where if you're going to a job interview and you're going to say, let's just say you're going to commit the next 5 to 10 years of your life at a company. Well, you want to work at a place that has similar values that you do, in a place where there is room for opportunity to advance, a place where you genuinely get along with the people that you're working with and spend most of the time with. So I think having a list of questions, or like I said, a couple of questions in your back pocket, and it could be just something as simple as, tell me about the company culture. It really shows that employer that you're taking this seriously, and as much as they want to get to know you, you want to get to know them as well, because you also want to make sure for yourself that it's a good fit, because you really don't want to be in a position where a year goes by, you're miserable,
Yeah.
and you want to be putting yourself in the same process all over again. It's not a good look. It's not good to job hop. And ideally, more of the time, or majority of the time, it's better to have kind of consistency and work and stay in a place and grow in a place, as opposed to just every year hopping
Yeah.
somewhere else.
And
So
you even just want to show the employer you're prepared. Like
yeah,
that's really what
yeah,
it is too, is just showing that you took the time, you put in effort, you're researching, you are ready for this next step and to get that job. Something else too, like even an employer when they're doing an interview. So we're all human.
yep.
Sometimes you get stuck in traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the train is late, the subway's late, whatever, your Uber's late, whatever it is. We are all human and shit happens.
Yep.
So even if you're like 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, nowadays everybody has a cell phone. It takes 2 seconds, again, if you can, depending on what the situation is, but if you can and you are running late, it is better to let the employer know, hey, I'm stuck in traffic or the train didn't come on time. I'm going to be about 10 to 15 minutes late, whatever it may be. But it's always better to let the employer know
Yep.
versus letting them sit there for like 5 or 10 minutes just to get pissed and have a crappier interview and already start your interview off on a negative note. It's better to just send a quick note, let them know if you're late. Again, we're all human. Things happen, but it's better to let them know versus coming into the interview with them already having a negative experience and negative persona of you.
Yeah, the amount of people that I've heard from where they were scheduled to do an interview, conduct the interview, and the candidate showed up late or just didn't show up at all.
Yeah.
It's like that. You're done. Unless, and like Steph said, shit happens, and unless you have an extremely valid reason for why you were late or why you couldn't reach out, like that's probably the most ultimate disrespect that you can do to that employer. And I know a lot of employers, that would be enough for them to say, I'm not even going to give you this chance.
Well, you're showing respect for their time. And if they're going to be hiring you, they want somebody who's going to obviously respect them. And flip side, you would want somebody to respect your time as well. So show that respect. So now that you've had your interview, what are some things, like Alex, what would you say now that the follow-up, what happens with the follow-up now?
Well, I don't think you want to be that person who has an interview and then is sending a follow-up 5 minutes after the interview, just saying, hey, I got any update? Like, no, definitely don't do that. Don't be that person. But no, it's always good to send a follow-up, whether you want to wait a day or two or even a couple of days, it's fine. But I definitely think it's a good thing to do to send a quick follow-up note afterward, just saying, hey, it's great to meet with you. Look forward to hearing about this position. Keeping it short, simple, just showing that you expressed gratitude for the fact that they met with you, and just showing that, again, you're showing your professionalism through an email with a nice follow-up message. It's something that a lot of people might not do, and if it's something that you do, it could be just enough to help you stand out for all the right reasons once again.
Exactly.
Just definitely don't be that person who's sending the email 5 minutes later after the interview while they're in another interview with another candidate. But definitely, if you're respectful with it, it's definitely something you should be doing.
I think so. It helps you stand out, and especially when you have an interview and you know that there's multiple interviews, why wouldn't you do something that helps you stand out?
Yep, 100%. 100%. Well, no, these are all tips that I think will help people. And again, I know we always talk about wanting to help people and how these are a lot of common mistakes that people make that seem obvious, but people still make them. So honestly, we really hope that people are able to find value through these tips and experiences, because the best way to learn is through experiences. And if you're listening and you're following these tips, they're going to help you when you're in your career, your job hunt.
Yes, so definitely keep listening to the Jobs Report podcast for more tips on how you can swipe to success and how you're going to swipe to find that job.